Welcome back to the Bentonville Beacon podcast, where we're sharing stories and advice from the leaders sparking the rise of Bentonville, one of the fastest growing and most dynamic cities in the United States, nestled in the Ozark Mountains of Northwest Arkansas in the heartland of America. Hey, I'm your host, James, and I am thrilled to share the studio today with Jared Smith, who is president and CEO of Kitestring Technical Services. Jared is also a board member of STOPWATCH, another local tech firm whose name you might recognize since Megan Kenneth Bowman was on this show a few weeks ago. And so Jared, welcome to the hot seat.
Well, thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
Happy to be here.
Thrilled you're here. Let's get started with one of my favorite questions, which is really, it's what's your story? Will you share with the audience? There's two things I want you to definitely share, and then everything else you share is up to you. And so, and those two things are, where did you grow up, and what brought you here to Bentonville, and then, share anything you want personally.
Okay, I'll give the whole story. I was born in Monroe, Louisiana, but 9 years old, I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. So lived in Little Rock until I graduated high school, Little Rock Central. Mm-hmm. So go Tigers. And then I was certainly not a strong student. I was probably a straight D student. I was not academically oriented. I tend to think I was probably just bored and not challenged. So I was not college bound, at least not immediately. So I essentially set off traveling the moment I graduated high school. I was ready to get out of Arkansas, see the world. So I think within a week of graduating high school, I was hitchhiking to California, spent 2 years hitchhiking, hopping freight trains all over the country. So it really was just kind of sowing my oats and having fun and getting around, but ultimately kind of grew a little tired of that and decided I needed to settle somewhere. I had some friends from Little Rock in Portland, Oregon, and settled there. It was just a place to choose. And then enrolled in college there at Portland State. Obviously, from my grades, I wasn't, I was on academic suspension, but ultimately college appealed to me. I did really well in college. I majored in chemistry, graduated with a 4.0, and continued to pursue chemistry and took a job with the Department of Energy down in the Bay Area. So I worked for the Department of Energy at Sandia National Lab in Livermore, California for 1 year, and then pursued my PhD at Berkeley for about 4 or 5 years after that, and then took another job at the Department of Energy at Berkeley National Lab and spent maybe 4 years there as a postdoctorate associate. And so around this time, my parents, who were at this point, they had left Little Rock and moved up to Rogers and or Northwest Arkansas, started calling and saying, would I be interested in moving back to Arkansas to take over the family business? So and the first response was, not a chance. I'm not moving back to Arkansas. I'd been in the Bay Area, mostly in Oakland and Berkeley for 10 years at that point, and moving back to Arkansas seemed like a step backwards.
Sure.
But ultimately, after a year of looking at homes, me and my wife were starting to look at homes, and homes are pretty expensive in San Francisco Bay Area. Started thinking maybe Arkansas is not such a bad choice. And so my dad had a little consulting company called LJ Smith and Associates. He had, I think, maybe 10 or so employees, and they were building software in the retail technology space. And, I built enough software as a scientist that I knew the basics and could learn the rest. So came home and came back to Arkansas, at least, Northwest Arkansas in 2010 to start building essentially mobile apps, software in the retail tech space. And that's what brought me back and brought me here, and kind of how I ended up where I am today.
That was a great story. I love it. You threw me when you said you were a straight D student, because all I could think of in the back of my mind was, okay, I can't wait to hear how he got to Berkeley.
I did very well in college, and I published a lot of papers, and then worked a lot at Sandia National Lab. That helped I was at the National Combustion Research Facility, got a lot of stuff done. So I think I sort of proved myself after high school. Yeah, luckily they don't look at high school transcripts.
Yeah, thank goodness, right? All right, well, congratulations, Dr. Smith.
Oh, thank you.
If your closest friend were to describe you in 4 words, what would that be?
Oh gosh, I did see this in this morning, so let me think here. Probably pragmatic would be almost anyone who knows me pragmatic. I'm really sort of about, I'm not too emotional about anything. I'm always looking for the practical solution. I would say I'm, oh gosh, let me think here. This is going to sound a little aggrandizing, but self-aggrandizing, but I would say generous. I feel like that's something that would describe me. And then not thinking of any other right
Two
now.
is good enough. Those are pretty strong though. Right?
But
yeah.
But I think another one maybe is decisive. So pragmatic and decisive, I really feel like go together and really makes me okay at my job, because a lot of times you got to make decisions when you're running a company that you don't have all the information. Like there's a lot of variables that you won't necessarily have all the information or consider. They're going to things are going to change in the future, and you just got to be able to, on limited information, make decisions. So I think I've gotten good at just making decisions.
That's great. I love that you said okay at my job and that you just admitted it, right? Because it's hard to lead companies.
It is really hard.
You don't have all the information that you need, and you just never know if that's going to be the right decision for sure. And so it's okay to admit okay. I love that. Talk about Kitestring. Could you start with who you serve, what the problem is that you solve, and how you do it?
Sure. We're a technology services firm. It's in the name. That means we're building software. Typically, I'll talk about the 3 or 4 different service offerings we have. So a big one is what we call strategic consulting, where we're going to help maybe at the CIO or executive level for them to sort of roadmap their technology. We're also going to do implementation work, which we call co-engineering. We're actually, handling keyboards, building software for a customer. We do another service offering called durable product teams, which is kind of we build a whole essentially Scrum team or software development team as a pod, and we'll sort of farm that out to help our customers. And then we also just do what we call custom software development, and that's kind of more of a managed outcome engagement where someone hands us a problem and we go build some software and hand it back to them. So those are four main things. Really, what we're doing in essence is helping our customers solve hard problems. That's what we do, and we bring in knowledgeable people. I mean, we are currently, there's 180 kite stringers, or maybe 185 somewhere. We're somewhere 180, 185 today. Really smart people dedicated to solving really hard problems. And a lot of our customers, which are anywhere from, we have, I think, 4 or 5 startups as customers to the world's largest company as a customer. Mm-hmm. And mostly their challenges, they're trying to solve hard problems in technology, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth, the people, or something to do it themselves. So maybe they want to focus on being a retailer, or they want to focus on doing something else. So they might bring us in to help do a specific task for them in the technology space.
That makes sense. So you've been at led Kitestring for what, 11 years?
Well, I started Kitestring in July of 2010.
Okay.
So that means I've been with the company, obviously, and I became CEO, I believe, in 2012. So 10 years, you're right.
Cool. All right. So brag on yourself for a moment and on your team. Talk about your achievements during your tenure so far, and what stands out as your proudest moments. Well, maybe that's the same thing, maybe it's not.
Let me think about that. So a couple things. One, just the obvious achievement is came into a company with 14 employees. And as I just said, we're 180 strong today. We're working out of 5 countries. We have employees in 15 different, we have employees in, I think, 30 different states, customers in 15 different states. And just, it's bigger than I ever imagined, when we started with 14 employees. So just the growth, I feel really proud about. In addition, I think what really gets me excited about doing this is creating a great place to work. Like, that's what's, I think, exciting and satisfying to me, is not just, it's not about, I get excited about technology, the money, the whatever, it's all good, but building a place that people want to work is really what I think motivates me more than almost anything. And I'll say something that's just, recent in the last few months. We do an annual survey of great place to work. It's essentially a anonymous survey to all the employees, and they can say how good of a place it is for fishing, and they get to do it completely anonymously. And our last survey that came out just maybe a couple months ago, we, for the first time, got 100%.
Wow.
Great place to work. So 100% of our employees said we are a great place to work, which was a really proud moment for me and for my team. I'll brag on Sapna Ramachandran, who's on the board at the chamber. She's our head of culture and talent experience, and she's done just a fantastic job of helping me and everyone else build a great culture there, or a place that people really want to work.
Man, that's very cool. 100. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We were doing good continues. Before. We were in the 95s to 97%, and we felt really good about that. And we even said, I don't know if we can improve on that when we went into this year, but we did. So we definitely can't improve on 100. So we kind of hit our ceiling, I think, but it's exciting.
That's a good ceiling to hit. That's phenomenal. Well, I hope this next question is okay to ask, because I'm not sure achievements are truly achievements if they're not a bit of a struggle, right? There's always some sort of bumps in the road or genuinely hard work to be done. So what are some of the challenges that the company's faced in the past 10 years, and how have you overcome them?
Oh my gosh, I could go on about the challenges probably longer than I can go on about the achievements for sure, because there's a million of them. And I mean, it's barely a week goes by or even a day goes by that I'm not sitting with my executive team saying, running a company, meaning the collective us running a company is really hard. There's a lot of things to think about. You got to think about the 401k. You got to think about the payroll. You got to think, there's just so many things you got to think about. And as our company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we have more employees, more countries, there's just more and more challenges. So there's a lot of moving parts. It gets really difficult. But one thing, I think that's been a theme throughout my career is that I really sort of gravitate to hard problems. And it used to be technology, and I realize now as I moved into a leadership role that hard problem I gravitate is solving these challenges of just running a company, a mid-sized company with 180 people. And it's really exciting to do, but it's not for everyone. It can be difficult. Beyond that, just the day-to-day grind of sort of doing this, I would say another challenge was probably, I think, 3 years after I started at Kitestring, and maybe a year after I took the reins as CEO, I had a stroke. And that was pretty darn tough. I couldn't see. I was in a wheelchair. So I was lost a lot of sort of my, I couldn't see a computer screen, which was at the time I was still coding. So I was out of commission for about 6 months, doing therapy and things like that. So I was have recovered for the most part, but that was a pretty serious challenge. We saw a really clear drop in revenue, and things were going the wrong way because I was just gone, and focused on other things. And seeing that, finally just through recovery, I was able to get back into the workplace after about 6 months, and we started to pick back up. And it feels good in a way to see those challenges and get through them, and then you're able to get through a downturn. Our revenue went down, our employee headcount went down, and you're able to get it pulled back up. Just, getting through it makes you feel good that you can take on any challenge that's coming that you haven't seen yet. Yeah,
that's a pretty strong challenge.
Yeah.
I'm afflicted with this problem of liking hard challenges or problems myself. And I feel like to get through hard challenges, I was making myself a note a moment ago, it sort of takes a combo of being impatient and playing the long game at the same time. Right? Yeah,
I love it.
Grinding through it.
That's exactly right.
How did COVID affect the company, if at all?
It did. It was really hard. I mean, there's a lot of fear. You're, honestly, back March 2020, thinking, I was at some point talking to my wife saying, I don't know how we make this. I don't know how we survive this. Like our customers are all heading for the exits. Everybody was sort of locking down, but ultimately PPP loan helped. We were able to, we had run a pretty lean ship before that. So I'm able to, we had a strong balance sheet. We had some really good customers that stuck with us even during the sort of the tough times. So ultimately what ended up happening is our growth trajectory slowed down quite a bit. And we're just now, probably in the last 5 months, beginning to eclipse where we were sort of pre-COVID, get back on that same, rise rate that we were on previously. So it was a disruption, but we got through it. And ultimately we didn't have to do any layoffs or anything like that. So I was excited that we didn't, I know it affected other companies much worse than it did us.
Yeah. It sounds like you've really built a sustainable company so that when that happened, that put you in not a perfect position, right? But a good position.
Well, sustainable, I think is exactly the right word. My goal is to build a company that lasts for 50, 100, literally 50 years, 100 years. I think about, I'm only 47, but I think about legacy a lot. And I would love to leave something that's bigger than me and build something that's bigger than me. And I think that's part of what motivates me. And a company that's what I call, there's a whole group of us that I know of other CEOs like this that are evergreen CEOs, meaning we're evergreen companies versus, say, exit-focused companies. We're building companies for the long haul. I would love my kids to come work for my company at some point. And, my father started the company and I've taken over, and I would like this to keep going. And so when you're doing that, when you have this really long perspective, I'm building a company for another decade, it's a little easier to absorb these challenges as they come, because you'll see a lot of them.
Well, I love that you're building an evergreen company. That's so smart. I think a lot of tech companies right now over the next 18 to 24 months are going to find out, how their growth strategies are going to play out.
Yeah, there's no. I would just say I have nothing against the, say, venture or private equity models that most tech companies, but it kind of gets all of the press these days. Is the venture backed, and people building companies that are evergreen, sort of companies built to last. It doesn't get a lot of press, but I think it's still I think an option that people should consider when starting a company, which is say, how do you bootstrap a company? It's much easier when you're in the services than you are in software, because then it definitely costs some money to build your product. But if you're doing services over products, you have an opportunity for sure to bootstrap your company, and you're not reliant on a venture fund or a private equity fund has a timeline to it. And it's not necessarily the right timeline for your business or your customers. And when you're an evergreen company, you really get to determine the timeline that's right for your employees, your customers, your shareholders, that sort of thing, and not a venture fund or a private equity fund.
Yeah, you betcha. I love that. I also love that you said you're building, a lasting company that you want to leave a legacy. And that's kind of where I'm at now too, is how do I leave a legacy, right? And we came here to Bentonville. I don't think I told you, I got married 3.5 years ago. We had a baby 2.5 years ago, height of the lockdown, a little bit late for us to be doing this kind of stuff. But now I get to do my tiny part, and maybe it's not legacy material yet, but I get to do my tiny part to help build and grow a place where my son can grow up, and perhaps siblings of his, and be a place that he's more than willing to remain in or leave and come back, which is absolutely fine, and would want to come back to. But, just be part of this sort of this amazing thing that's happening here in Bentonville.
Absolutely. So within the essentially central mission of Kitestring, like in our mission statement, is community is important to us. I think our mission statement is to sharing our knowledge to positively impact our customers, our employees. Actually, we say employees, customers, and community. And we intentionally put employees first, customers, and then community, because I think having an impact on your community, businesses, obviously, there's some big businesses here that have had a tremendous impact on the local community. And I think for-profit businesses are often the biggest drivers of that, making a community a great place to live. And I want to be part of that. And I'm excited that Kitestring gets to play a small role. Yeah,
you bet. Well, you touched on my next question when you introduced the concept of the employee coming first, really. And that is that it seems like a core principle at Kitestring is happy consultant, happy client.
Yes.
So how do you attract employees, especially these days, and keep them happy and keep them from sort of bugging out to that grass that's supposedly greener on the other side, whatever that is?
It's challenging. I mean, I'll just say it is challenging, and we haven't totally figured it out, especially in technology. There's you know, they talk about, you know, in the broader economic, you know, landscape of the United States, there's something like 2 openings for every job seeker, but in technology, that might be between 4 and 6 job openings for every job seeker. So it's a tough landscape when there's a lot of jobs, you know, and it's very difficult to be the highest salary in the United States. I don't have the capital structure to be that person. So you got to find other ways besides just paying people as much as you can. You got to find ways. And I've always leaned into, and we as a company lean into, having a great culture, being inclusive, sort of having people participate in many different sort of company events that are hopefully ones that they enjoy, and they, you know, and we're all over the place. So many of them are virtual, some of them are in person, and bringing us together to a way where we, I think, hopefully care about each other and supporting each other is a way I think we get people to think about it maybe a little bit more than just a job, and that maybe they get some fulfillment or purpose out of that job. And I think that's the key to keeping people in your company, is where it's more than just a paycheck. It's got to be something that they get real fulfillment out of, real joy out of. And I think that fulfillment and joy is going to come from the work they do, but also the people they work with, the people they're working alongside. So the concept of happy consultant, happy customer was early on when I first sort of stepped into the role, I realized I needed to kind of think about what differentiates Kitestring. And what are we doing? And I'd spent years, when I first got here, it was still Kitestring, but I was working mostly with IBM. So I was kind of under the IBM umbrella and working for a very large consulting firm, you know, doing work for, you know, obviously a big company here in town. And ultimately, the problem felt like it was just a commodity, like finding butts and putting them in the seats. That was the thing. And I was like, well, how can I compete with an IBM, or how can I compete with the Accentures or Cognizant and there's a lot of big companies out there, and what do I do different? I said, you know, well, if we really truly put the employee first, they're going to go to bat for our customers. And then those customers will feel that difference. They'll recognize that difference. So it started from the beginning of saying, you know, happy consultant or happy employee leads to a happy client. And it's really paid off for us. I think our customers recognize the difference that a Kitestringer brings to their team, because I think they're excited about what they're doing and they're excited about the company they work for.
Yeah, it'll bring a certain level of passion that, you know, I mean, look, when you're happy, life is better, period, right? Absolutely.
Right before I came here, we had an employee ERG today. So this is something that the culture and talent team sets up. And we were really talking about our career paths in tech. And so there was literally, you know, we just get a small group together and we kind of talk about something. We had 37 people on, and they were from all different backgrounds. it was such a great variety of people. And we just had this really engaged discussion about where we had been throughout our career. And it just felt like, at least I felt, that everybody was really excited to be there. You're really, you know, excited to talk to their fellow employees, or, you know, their fellow people on their teams or people on other teams. And that, I think that's the main thing that Kitestring does well, and how we're able to keep retention as you know, and we still struggle with retention, you know, like everybody does, but I think we're able to do a pretty good job by having a great culture that people want to be a part of.
That's really cool. So I guess arguably you're not in the technology business, you're in the people business, and you happen to do technology really darn well, and people pay you for it.
Well, my view is, if I run a pizza shop, I run a gas station, I run a Fortune 500 technology firm, I'm in the people business. It's all people. We're people interacting with our customers, we're people interacting with each other, and we're people interacting with our vendors and our community. So ultimately, I think it's all people. And I say this constantly at work. It's all about people. And this is what, to me, is really exciting about running a company, is, you know, and almost anyone who's run a large company will tell you it's the people problems that are more challenging than anything else. It's how you guys are getting along and how you're interacting with your customers, and whether you're selling a product to your customer or whether you're selling a service to your customer, they're going to often buy that product or service from you based on how they're interacting, whether it's a positive interaction with you. So I think it's always the people business. But you're absolutely right. We're in the people business, but I think everybody's in the people business.
Sure. So Okay, if I understand right, you've scaled Kitestring from 14 to about 185 employees. And I feel like you've answered a lot of this next question I have here, but I'm going to ask you anyway, because I want to see if you can summarize or add anything that you want that's been missed. But, you know, a smart person once told me that hard things happen at sort of factors of 3 and 10, going from those 3 core employees or founders to 10 employees to 30 employees to 100 employees, that these become these sort of giant steps that are so much harder. I don't know how those numbers exactly apply to Kitestring, but for founders and CEOs that might be out there listening who are starting to scale their companies or scaling them, what should they be thinking about regarding how they're going to successfully increase their headcount and do it in a sustainable way, somehow have happy employees too, and therefore really treat their customers well and serve them?
First advice I do is care about culture early. You know, it's too soon to really hire that head, assign someone whose job it is. If it's not, maybe it's going to be the CEO in the beginning, but it's someone's job to make it a great place to work, to really think about culture. Culture is an intentional creation of a company. And if no one tends to the culture, it will create its own, and it could be a bad one. So you can be really intentional about culture. I think but also I think you're right. Getting, the early days of the company, getting from say 10 to 20 felt difficult, but I had no idea what was hard. I had no idea what was hard until you start getting to the 100, 150. And then now you start to see, and there's a great book by Doug Tatum. I think he's at University of Texas business school. It's a business book about companies trying to break through. He often calls it going from, say, a small company to a mid-sized company or mid-sized company. And he often says there's this no man's land. And there's a zone. He said it's in the, maybe 200 employees, 25 to 50 million in revenue. This is exactly where Kitestring is. We're kind of in that range where it's really hard to break through. And the vast majority of companies don't break through to begin to scale really into hundreds of employees and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. It's a really difficult thing. So ultimately, I have not solved that yet. We're still getting, we're kind of getting near 200, and we've been getting near 200 for a little while now. We're still trying to figure out, but it's really about, you start to have to be, I always think, to get to a company with say 50 or 100 employees, you can do it with just being smart and working really dang hard. But once you get above that, at some point you had to really figure out process and be better at process and have really smart people around you who are also working on process that's repeatable and you can do over and over and over. And that's what we're really getting a hold of now, I think, at Kitestring is getting those processes in place and having the right leaders where we're all kind of driving towards the same goals and have some good process in place where we can begin to scale the system bigger and bigger and bigger. We always kind of say what we've done at Kitestring over the last few years is build an engine to get us to, now we're ready to launch. So, I mean, we're sizable, now at 185, but we have ambition to get much, much bigger than we are. And a lot of that's getting a lot of pieces and parts in place and ready to do that.
Yeah, you bet. It's like there's this chasm and you have to build a bridge to get there. And it just takes a long time to build a good quality bridge that's going to stand up to the test of time.
I know a lot of companies that get kind of where I am, and you spend some time there. And ultimately you're going to do one of two things. You're going to finally scale beyond, or you're going to begin to shrink. And we're really starting to scale now, but it's a hard problem to solve. So and you're going to spend some time in this sort of no man's land, I think, where you're 100 and something, maybe 200 employees, but you're not really like scaling to thousands of employees, and that's kind of where the problems we're trying to solve right now.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, one more question before we start making a turn in a slightly different direction. Sure. Jared, I was trolling Kitestring's website, and I hit the news link. And, on most websites, when you hit the news link, what you see are these stories about the company, right? Promoting its products, what we did last week, sometimes employees, and something spectacular that they did, especially if it, is good PR and credibility for the company. But I'll say not so for Kitestring in terms of what I saw. Yes, those stories are there. But what's vastly more prominent on Young's news link is these sort of mini stories and interviews of your employees, these spotlights. And it's just one story after another. And infrequently you have the stories about the company. And I thought that was pretty cool because, and smart, because people want recognition and they want to be known. And I feel like Kitestring has found a slightly different way there of giving them recognition to be known and heard. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you're right on the money there. So I think recognition, I mean, I've talked about culture a lot here, and building a great culture. A part of great culture is recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants some recognition.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing employees in a public way on our website, on LinkedIn, and other social media channels that we do is a way to sort of call out the great work they're doing for us. And it's kind of core to our values of being people first. Because honestly, as a consulting firm, you could just say, people are our product.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are our product, people need to come first, right?
Yeah.
We need to put people on a pedestal and make sure they feel recognized and they feel heard and they feel included and all those sort of things that we try and do. And I think just having the focus on employee spotlights, it's where we get to actually some of the most traction. When we see like specific content we put out that gets the most traction, it's almost always the employee spotlights.
That is very
people
cool.
like to hear about what people are, what their either their co-employees are up to, what their old friends are up to, and just whatever. So those really get a lot of traction.
That's really neat. Okay, starting a little transition here. Kitestring's based right here in Bentonville. Do you find that as a hindrance or an advantage in building and growing your company and hiring employees?
Absolutely an advantage, no doubt. Most of our employees, our customers are all over the place. We have some core customers right here in Northwest Arkansas for sure. And we have plenty of employees working with them, but we have employees in over 30 states, doing different things. But I think about 50% or so of our total headcount is in Northwest Arkansas. And it's, and now that we're kind of moving away from the pandemic and we're starting to at least work about half of our time back in the office again, we're getting a little more focused on hiring. And my gosh, so when I moved here in 2010, I was, early on, I was recruiting staff here, and it was very difficult to convince someone to move to Nowheresville, Arkansas. Is what I felt like I was doing. And, people would come for a visit and they would realize there wasn't even hardly a restaurant in town beside the big chain restaurants. So that has become exponentially easier now. I would love people to come visit because there's so many things for them to see. I encourage them to hit the trails, to get out to the restaurants. And there's, it's just it's much more vibrant place than it was, even 5 years ago, but much less 10 years ago and 12 years ago when it was early days. So it's gotten a lot easier to recruit people, but also there's a lot of people that we're not necessarily moving here, that I'm just hiring talent that already lives here. And there's a lot of great talented people living in Bentonville that have a ton of great experience, that have worked for some of the big companies here. So there's a good talent pool and that's really, I feel like, gotten better and better and better over the years.
Awesome. That's very cool. I love what you said about, 2010 and chain restaurants. It's funny that, I've been here for 2 years and my observation has been, wow, we don't have very many chain restaurants. That tells you how far it's come.
Yeah, it was only chain restaurants. So there was Restaurant Row, which was over on the other side of the freeway and kind of near Rogers. I don't know if it was technically in Rogers, but on Walnut Street or something like that. But there were like 8 restaurants there, all chain restaurants. And that was kind of where we went to dinner. And it was it would, on a Friday night, it was like an hour-long line to get into like a Applebee's or something like that. And just, I don't even know if there's a restaurant. I haven't gone over to Restaurant Row over there in years because there's, all the great stuff in the square and a million other options in terms of restaurants and things to do. So it's really just exploded.
Yeah, I think there's a Red Robin over there, and then the typical Chick-fil-A and Sonic and so on, but not much going on there. And then, gosh, you're getting into town now, and there's so many amazing restaurants. But like many people, you came to Bentonville and you didn't leave. What is it? And I think you've talked to some of it. But what is it about this place that makes it a compelling place to be home? And for people to have, I'll call it that mythical work-life balance, if that's even real. And I'll twist the question one more time to get there is, how does living and working in the Bentonville area help you live the life that you deserve?
let me think. I would probably, so I live in downtown Bentonville, and my office is probably a 15-minute walk and, maybe I think a 6-minute bike ride. And there's restaurants, there's coffee, there's Onyx Coffee. So I can do everything. I'm going to work, I can be home, I can go to restaurants, I can do all this without even getting in a car. I can like walk around or get on my bike. Great place to be biking, obviously. And I think that just that sort of sense of community where you can do everything and like kind of create your world all in one sort of small place, and you've got everything you want, like the library, the restaurants, and it just feels really, to me, the number of people I know, like when I'm out walking or riding my bike, you do tend to know a lot of people around here, and you can do all that in sort of one place and be able to get between my work and my office on a bicycle in 7 minutes is a big game changer. I used to, in the Bay Area, it was normally about 50 minutes, and I lived right in the middle of the city in the Bay Area. So, and I was still at a 50-minute commute to work, and now I can get to work in 7 minutes on a bike, and it's a really enjoyable bike ride. And there's a lot that I think just having that sort of access to everything really quickly. And then we can go do bike rides at lunch, things like that, make it where having just quick access, I think would be the way I'd put it, is the big advantage here.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, short of having not very long distances, pretty much all of that didn't exist. I guess a little over a decade ago. You've seen some change. You've described some of it. How else has Bentonville evolved and changed over that time?
Well, so I remember when I first moved here, 2010, we rented a home in Bentonville, kind of right off Central near the interstate. And literally first night, so we moved here from obviously the Bay Area. My wife said, I'm going to run to the grocery store, get a few things. We just arrived. Our furniture was ahead of us, I think, or on a moving truck. And so we were just going to get some food for the evening. And she came back in tears, and she's like, all the vegetables are shrink wrapped. Like, so just, there was not organic vegetables. There wasn't, it was just this, it was just felt like a small town that nothing was happening in then. And now, I mean, the selection of, we live right beside the neighborhood market in downtown, which, but we have a lot of different choices of food, of fresh ingredients, of the farmer's market, like all these sort of things that at first felt really, I mean, there's a lot of tears in those early days of what have I done? Especially my wife was, where have you taken me? But ultimately I think now I couldn't overstate how happy we are to be here now.
That's cool. What do you feel like are some of the factors behind sort of this remarkable growth and evolution of Bentonville?
Probably the biggest one would be, I would just say, investment. Obviously, investments from the big three, and because when people care, obviously, I think I don't have any background here or anything, but I think the Walton family, Walmart, and others are really investing in having a bikeable place, a really great place to live. I know, different restaurants are being opened to make this a place where ultimately, if you can attract talent, you can build your company. Like that's a core piece of, it's really hard to build a big company in the middle of nowhere. You need to have this infrastructure of, accessible things that people want to do, whether those are restaurants, bike trails, or so. I think it's really just come down to an very intentional investment on the part of, either the city, the chamber, the families, all that has brought Bentonville to where it is today. Yeah, it feels at this point super smart. Like that this is intentional, and we got to make this place somewhere people really want to live. And that's how we're going to attract the talent we need to go do the things we want to do as a company.
Yeah, it has been quite intentional, it seems, and I can't wait to see what the next 10 years hold. I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to ask you this next question as sort of a quick answer question. That's a two-part question. Did you ever think Walmart was going to build a new home office? And what do you think of that magnificent new campus that they're building?
Well, the first part, I don't know if I really thought of you know, when they announced it, I was pretty surprised, but frankly, I was very happy. The reason why is to know that I think there's some confidence we probably all get by having Walmart here in town.
Yeah.
And in knowing that that level of investment is happening here in Bentonville is a little bit of a warm security blanket. You got to say, you know, you're because clearly they're doubling down on the city of Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas in general. So I think I was really excited. Now, obviously, the plans look amazing, and I'm really excited to see it and go sort of explore it. But I think ultimately it tells me this is a real long-term investment in the city, in Bentonville, and in the region, and it's going to pay dividends to the region for many, many years to come. I mean, we haven't even begun to see how, we talk about, you said 2 years ago things, how far they've come. I think in 2 years and 4 years from now, we're going to be saying, I can't believe how sleepy it was in 2022, because once that campus opens, this is going to be really a world-class place, and it's going to bring, there's going to be more development around the campus, more restaurants are going to start popping up, and, more people are going to be moving here. So I think you'll just continue to see this escalation of what we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, tell me a story. This is a hashtag because Bentonville story. In other words, it's a moment even or story about something that happened where you went, gee, that's hashtag because Bentonville, because maybe it could only happen here, or describes the essence of this place.
Okay. Let me think here. I think ultimately what I get really a lot out of from Bentonville is just the entrepreneur community. There's a lot of entrepreneurs here I know, I'm friends with, whether it's Michael from Rev Unit, Jeff Clapper from Ethan Walton, or Megan from Stonehenge. There's just a lot of great companies here, and it doesn't feel competitive. It feels like everybody's kind of helping and supporting each other, and I really love that. But in terms of a moment, I'll describe one for you. So probably rewind to maybe 2013, 2014. I'm living here, and I'm still writing code. I was doing a mobile app for a local large retailer. So I was building this mobile app, and there's a web and mobile component to it. And we were using icons from a open source library called FontAwesome. And, we always talked about how much we liked FontAwesome, and a lot of the engineers I had on my team were kind of sort of, crowing about how great FontAwesome is. Flash forward to 2019, we were having a crawfish boil in my driveway with my neighbor. So our neighbors have been doing this for years, and we kind of joined in, and we're having a crawfish boil for the neighborhood. And, I'm sitting there eating crawfish, and one of the neighbors walks up, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, oh, I live about a block away. He's like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I own a technology firm. I was like, really? What do you do? And he's like, I own a company called FontAwesome. So, really, a company I've been aware of obviously for probably, 8 years at that point. And Dave Gandy, who now lives in my neighborhood and runs FontAwesome, founder and CEO, and has become a friend. It just felt like a real kind of moment to be like, oh, the company I've been aware of for a year is literally living a block and a half from me.
Yeah, and I think he relocated here from somewhere, Boston or somewhere East Coast.
Boston, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. That's a great story. Before I forget to ask, if somebody wants to know more about Kitestring, or perhaps goes, gosh, I got to be employed there, or reach out to you, how do they do that?
Well, our website, which is just www.kitestring.com. The easiest thing, luckily we have the Kitestring domain, which took a little getting in the early days. You can get me at jared.smith@kitestring.com. But I think our website or me on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn, I'm always happy to answer emails and sort of connect with people. It's kind of one of my favorite things about Bentonville is I'm doing it all the time. I'm just reaching out to you. It's very easy to find the person in Bentonville that you might want to talk to about something and get a coffee with them. There's almost no barrier to this. This was not the case in the Bay Area. If you wanted it was quite hard. You had to go through 3 or 4 people, and you still didn't get the coffee. But it's very easy to get a coffee with whoever you want here. So I like doing that. I like getting coffee with people. So if someone reaches out to me, my email's the best way.
Awesome. All right. So some closing questions. Stole this one right out of your interview of your employees on your website. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't really have much of a memory of wanting to be anything besides for a while. I think when I was in junior high, I was interested in being a heart surgeon. Because I was born with a heart defect. That's why I mentioned the stroke earlier. It was related to my heart defect. So just kind of always knowing I've had multiple heart surgeries over the years, kind of sort of drew me towards, and then, at some point in high school, I got more into science and technology, and didn't pursue that. But that's the only thing I remember is wanting to be a heart surgeon.
Cool. Another one I lifted straight off those interviews. What's the best professional advice you've ever received?
Okay, here, I don't know if you'd call this advice, but I think it's really stuck with me. This is my PhD professor at Berkeley, really smart guy named Rich Shakely. So in my first year in your PhD program, you have to pick a advisor who's going to give you what's called a qualifying exam. It's a 3-hour sort of brutal exam of, you're in front of a whiteboard and they're just peppering with questions. We all sort of knew, everybody, all the kids, there's, 100 of us in our class, of PhD students, knew you got to avoid this guy, Dave Chandler. That was just one of the professors. He's so hard. He just tears the students apart. He had this horrible reputation. And so, he was my statistical mechanics professor. So I knew him, and he was really tough. I could tell just from that. So like everyone, I was avoiding him. But Rich comes to me probably a few weeks after joining his lab, saying you got to pick an advisor for your thesis committee and your qualifying exam, and I want you to pick Dave Chandler. And I freaked. I was like, what? All I've heard is this is the hardest guy in the department, And he said, he's bragging on Berkeley a little bit here when he says this, but I think it stuck with you. He said, you're in the NFL of chemistry, learn to take a hit. And that learn to take a hit part sort of stuck with me forever as advice, as, you're going to get beat up a lot, whatever you do. You're going to take some hits. And sort of, I think, and I went and, I think the next day went into Dave Chandler's office and asked him to be my advisor. And I think I was probably the only student who had actually asked this person to be his thesis advisor in a long, long time, if ever. And it was turned out to be a great experience. He was a great advisor. He was tough, but he was good. And it was kind of led me to sort of go at challenges. And I think that's sort of how I respond at work, is when I feel like the going gets tough, I want to go to work an hour earlier. Like that's kind of, that's the way I sort of orient myself at work. And I feel like that's the best professional advice, is to kind of just lean into the challenges.
That's awesome. What's the best professional advice you've ever given?
Well, you'd have to ask getting the advice there, but I'll say what I believe. This is the advice I give often, is take risk with your career. Don't be afraid to take risks. So many people, and I think this one thing, not a negative on Bentonville, but certainly there's a lot of good jobs in this town, a lot of good jobs. So people tend to gravitate towards well-paying, very safe jobs. And it's hard to get people out. We don't have the sort of tolerance for risk here that you might have in some other more entrepreneurial ecosystems like Silicon Valley and things like that. So when I'm talking to you, I always say, just take the risk. You're almost never going to regret it. Even if you fail at your whatever you wanted to go do, your comfy, corporate job is still there. You can always go back to it. So take risks. That's what I always say. It's when anyone asks me advice, that's probably my first thing, is take risks with your career. You're rarely going to look back at your career at the end of it going, I took too many risks. It's usually the opposite. I should have taken more risks. I should have done things that are a little scary.
That's so true. I feel like I've been and I have this really winding career, but or professional timeline, but the most fulfilling times have been the scariest times, because they were the riskiest things that I pursued. What's one piece of professional advice that you think that people ought to stop giving?
Oh, I don't know on that one. Probably I'd probably go what we talked about earlier. You have to raise money to start a company. I don't think that's true at all. I don't, even if you're doing a product company or a service company, you don't need to raise money. You can do it. There's many examples. There's many pathways to building a company. And the common pathway that everybody sort of talks about these days is raising money, do a normal, and I don't think you can still do it the way our parents and grandparents did it, which was just, by sort of elbow grease and hard work.
Exactly. Okay, last question.
Okay.
What's something I should have asked you that I did not ask?
Why in the heck was I hopping freight trains? No.
I'd love to know that answer.
I don't really know what something feel like we touched on most of the things I really feel passionate about. It's, to me, it's about people, culture, and, making a great, us and Kitestring's impact on community to make this a better place. Obviously, we don't have the impact as the big guys, but we're doing our part. So I think we talked about most of the things that I felt like were important.
Cool.
I can't think of any glaring omissions.
Well, I think everybody has a much bigger impact than they know. And so, Jared, thank you for spending time with me and with our Bentonville Beacon audience today. I appreciate the peek behind the curtain you gave us, but this whole discussion about people as well, and about how Bentonville is helping you and your company thrive, and just everything that we've had in the conversation. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
Thanks for giving to this community.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you to our Bentonville Beacon audience. If you like what you heard, please do me a couple of favors. Will you share this episode by email or text or social media? And, keep coming back to hear more about Bentonville and its leaders and businesses, and this place where you can get more of what you want and less of what you don't. And as always, hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player and check out BentonvilleEconomicDevelopment.com, where you can see all of our episodes and learn more. Thanks. See you next time.